The deepening budget crisis on Beacon Hill has again raised questions about whether a summer sales tax holiday is really such a good idea. Last year, the state decided against the annual tradition due to fiscal constraints, and this year, the budgetary situation looks comparably bleak. But supporters say the break gives a boost to retailers and relief to consumers. Today on Beacon Hill, lawmakers considered a proposal to revive the sales tax weekend, and Governor Charlie Baker says he's open to the idea.
I think we should take a look at it and consider doing it. I know there's a hearing on it tomorrow. It's very tough to be in retail these days, and I think it's something that's worth consideration.
Joining me to discuss are Russell Holmes, a Democratic state rep from Boston, Mike Dean, WGBH News' State House reporter, and John Hurst, president of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having me.
John, why is this such a priority for your organization and your members?
Well, it's all about the sales tax. You know, we have all these competitors. There's more competitors online that don't collect the sales tax than do. So they're getting a 365-day-a-year sales tax holiday in Massachusetts. And ironically, our tax policy in the Commonwealth is actually incenting our consumer, which is 70% of our economy, to buy online because they get that 6.25% discount.
Who is not paying the sales tax right now? Because Amazon does, right?
They do, but
biggie.
They do, but 40% of the folks under their marketplace do not. And then eBay doesn't, Overstock doesn't. It goes on and on and on and on.
Now, my recollection is that last year when the state didn't do this, a lot of your members said, we're going to do it ourselves, right? We'll offer consumers a discount. How'd that work out?
Well, mixed results. The consumer's smarter than you think. You know, they did that promotion, but the consumers knew, I'm not getting the true break from the man. You know,
Wait, what do you mean? Weren't they getting the exact same discount they would have
They
gotten?
were, but they
so how are they not getting a break
tax
from the man? I don't get it.
Look, 52% of all consumers don't want to pay the sales tax on the internet. That's clear. That's why Congress hasn't fixed this problem. They don't want to pay the sales tax, so they don't have to.
I swear I'm going to get the two of you, and I got to ask John one more question. Back in 2015, the Beacon Hill Institute did a study for you guys looking at the efficacy of the sales tax holiday. Here's what one of your members had to say. The sales tax holiday has created more problems than benefits for us. Business is non-existent 3 weeks before and 2 days after. 5 weeks of business are crammed into 2 days, and the total amount of sales doesn't come close to 5 normal weeks of summer business. How do you know that this sales tax holiday creates new business as opposed to just sort of moving business around?
Because the Federal Reserve did a study. They looked at the 18 sales tax holidays this past March, specifically looking as a model the Massachusetts experience, and they showed clearly that in 2016 we were hurt versus 2014 and 2015. They said it was a very strong consumer benefit.
And that new business was created that would not have occurred otherwise?
Exactly.
All right. Representative Holmes, there is, as I understand it, about $1 billion budgetary shortfall looming on Beacon Hill.
Well, more pressing is the $500 million that we're anticipating in this year's budget. But, yes, the potential for $1 billion.
So with this, if there is a sales tax holiday, as I understand it, the state loses about $25 million in sales tax revenue. Isn't that kind of a paltry number given how big the gap is that has to be made up this year and next?
So I don't call it paltry when I lose essentially every earmark in my budget. And so when I think about my district, I think about the fact that you think about NECAD, which is about getting jobs for people, a program that gets jobs for people who have been disconnected from the job market. They lost $300,000. And so for me, I will only be comfortable with foregoing the sales tax only after we get to a point where we can now get back to the earmarks that we in our district things are very, very important. And so to the point about the consumer being very smart, I agree. They are very smart, and they will delay, I believe, they will delay their purchases, as you mentioned, the gentleman said, until it's time for the sales break. And so each year we're going to say, folks, we're going to give you a sales tax, and then they'll wait for that, and then they'll go out and do their purchases.
Can you give me other examples of some of the consequences for your district? You mentioned the NECAD program. Is that, by the way, for people who've been incarcerated, or is that people who've been disconnected?
Exactly. But I would say name any of them. Lena Park has been trying to get some funding for their program in just $25,000. I can say Sportsman's Tennis Club. We had been looking to get some rehabs for them for their property. They have great programming, but the capital expenditure has been a problem for them for about 45 years. And when those things are cut in my district, those are the things for me. Yes, we know about all the things that happen, for health care and things of that nature, but the things that cut the most for the things that folks expect me to deliver are those earmarks that have not been able to be delivered for the last 2 years.
Mike Dean, Governor Charlie Baker did not seem to be too worried about skipping this last year, but he's striking a different tone in 2017. What's changed for Baker?
I think that Baker has a better understanding now of just what these revenues come and go as, the flow that happens month to month. He is looking at this $500 million right now and this potential $1 billion for next year, but he is, I guess, seeing that there are benefits in boosting the retail economy and the retail sector through this. Call it a giveaway, call it a boost, call it whatever you want. It's state money that's subsidizing a certain industry, and that industry supposedly has benefit on the state as a whole. That's the argument. That's John's argument, certainly. What the governor's seeing now is that even though the budget looks like it might be in worse shape than it was last year, that this might still be the kind of gamble he wants to do. There's also the other side of the ledger here is that people like it, and the legislature likes it. It's just a goodwill maneuver that people like to see government doing something, and they go to the store knowing it's their lawmakers and their governor that let them go to the store.
And I like it too. Of course I like it.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to give the sales tax. I love voting for it. But when you're cutting at the same time just basic things that I have to, and the problem is also with the earmarks and the things that we deliver to the district, we promised them. So we've said a year in advance, well, here's the $100,000, and then the Gov comes back, months later with a 9C, and then all of a sudden
9C for lay people watching at home.
I'm sorry, for 9C cut to then take out. You said another example is the Urban League. So the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts loses $400,000 that they were expecting again to get more people employed. So
but
trying
how
to
does
balance
it cost
that.
us any money when these are sales we weren't going to get in the first place? These are sales that are recovered from tax-free internet sites or from New Hampshire. And so what it's doing, we can't be penny wise and pound foolish. We need to save these stores that the dark storefronts are proliferating, and that means less jobs, less property tax, less income tax.
They are proliferating, but I wonder if this is sort of an attempt to wage a battle that simply can't be won. I mean, aren't they proliferating because we talked about Amazon earlier? Amazon has perfected this sort of all-encompassing mode of seamless purchase and delivery. It seems to me, maybe I'm being cynical here, like you could have a sales tax holiday half of the year, and that's not going to make brick and mortar come back and start winning the fight against Amazon.
Not when you have, frankly, an absurd tax structure which incents our consumers, gives them a 6.25% discount to go out of state to make their purchases.
But
it's not just that, though. It's also the fact that, again, consumers are smart. So the fact that you can sit there and shop online readily, easily without going to a store, that's just the problem with just brick and mortar just in general, not just the fact that it's a tax on it. It is the convenience of being at home and doing your shopping.
But isn't this a better investment than, say, $40 million to Hollywood for Ghostbusters 2?
Well,
this is about incenting our consumers to spend in our economy, not in someone else's.
What is the guarantee that consumers will spend if this break is given? What's going to make them spend at a kind of idyllic New England-y mom and pop shop in the center of a town somewhere as opposed to going to Best Buy?
They're not
or going
doing
to Apple?
That. Because it's Beacon Hill telling the consumer that your spending, we know you can spend anywhere, but your spending is important. It's like a small business Saturday. We want you to spend in your community. We want you to spend locally.
But they still can go to Best Buy, right, or go to the Apple store or order from Amazon without paying sales tax on that given day, and they'll still get the break, right? It's not finely tailored to local businesses?
Well, look, they're 70% of the economy. They can spend locally, whether it's a small retailer or a large retailer, protect those jobs, or they can send it out of state. If they're 70% of the economy, don't we want them spending in our state?
I would very much like them spending in my neighborhoods as well. So if we're not the feeling also if you're not going to show up at Sears, Best Buy, and the large big box stores, I would be much more inclined.
You'd be amenable to a sales
more.
Tax holiday that was only focused on local businesses?
Right.
Well,
and it's also going to target. We could talk about that. And it's also looking
I think we're making news here today, guys. Let's run with this.
Right now, it's a regressive tax, too. I mean, our low income, it's always been regressive. Folks that can't drive to New Hampshire have to pay it. And our low income consumers may not have smartphones and certainly not credit cards to avoid the tax. So we need to deal with this issue and deal with it now.
I want to give the last word to WGBH's own Mike Dean. My understanding is that whatever Charlie Baker thinks of this idea, even if he's totally bullish on it, it's really not going to matter, right, unless House Speaker Bob DeLeo and Senate President Stan Rosenberg dig it as well. How do they feel about this?
I think they kind of go back and forth sometimes as well when those revenue projections do suggest that that money needs to be in the budget to pay for certain things, and when there's pressure on those leaders, the Senate President and the House, from members like Representative Holmes, who say, well, I don't think that my earmarks should be sacrificed for this kind of economic subsidy. So they are getting pressure from both sides, and they are, we talked about DeLeo the other day, and he says he's, definitely going to look at it. We're going to have hearings on it. We're going to go through with it that way.
So he's keeping a more open mind than last year as well, right?
I think almost every single issue on Beacon Hill right now is enthralled by this revenue question. Yeah. What are the numbers going to be, and what decisions do we make based on that? Tax collections are low, and that is affecting every decision that those big three make.
Sure. All right, there it is. Mike Dean, John Hurst, Russell Holmes. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.